I don't know how many times I say disgusting. What it is, what it ain't. It's your girl AMBREALERTT, and I'm back with another video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Mr. Jeffrey Epstein, okay? The child predator. Oh, I just watched the Netflix documentary and it was cringy to say the least. Before I get into all of that, Happy New Year to everybody. It's officially 2022. I hope that everyone had a very safe New Year because last night they was shooting, okay? And I almost got down on the floor, but I didn't feel like it. Okay, that's how much they were shooting last night. But anyway, I hope everybody was safe, and I hope that you spent your new year with people that you love. Now, if you are ready to hear about this Netflix documentary called, I believe it's Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. That's what it's called. So if you're ready for me to tell y'all everything that's going down, then make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Okay, subscribe. It is a new year. We're doing new things on this channel. Subscribe and let's get into the video. Okay, let's just get into it because we got things to talk about, okay? Today is a little bit different. I am drinking a Coca-Cola instead of drinking coffee, which is kind of different for me. I hope you guys like this, you know, me changing up the background a little bit. I just thought I would try something different. I'm still working out the kinks. I might actually get a backdrop to put on this wall. So drop some color suggestions. What do you guys think? I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, maybe, I mean, purple and green is my favorite color, so I might do something like that. You guys like that orange, the velvety orange background? I'm kind of sick of it, to be honest. So that's why I thought about putting a backdrop on this wall, but just drop that below. Drop some color suggestions. I'm down for whatever. We're gonna get into the documentary. I did hear a couple of years ago that he committed suicide in jail, and it was like a conspiracy on that, like whether he committed suicide or not. And I was like, what did he do? And like now I'm just hearing that he's like a child predator. I knew it had something to do with the Me Too movement, but I wasn't sure like to the extent of what had happened, and it was really nasty, okay? What I found out was really nasty, so I'm just gonna show and tell what was going on in the documentary. But anyway, let's get into the video. Jeffrey Epstein was very rich. He lived predominantly in Palm Beach, Florida, in like the gated community. It's kind of like an island when you think about it, because it's like it's so many mansions. It's near yachts, and you know, it's with a lot of rich people, including James Patterson, the author. I've read a book or two of his, and they're really good. I mean, I was so shocked when I saw him on the documentary actually saying that that was his neighbor. I was like, James Patterson, the author? Like, go off. So you know it's a bunch of rich people that live there, because he makes some great books. I forgot what book I read of his, but it was so good. It was so good. It had me on the edge. But anyway, he did have several houses around the world, or apartments. He had an apartment in New York. He owned an island in the Caribbean, and people even called that Pedophile Island. You know he was nasty. I mean, we just gonna get right into it though. The strange thing about the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing that I thought was strange was that his wife was really involved in a lot of his predatorial activities. That was the part that was strange. She was nasty too, so they were just a nasty ass couple. I'm just gonna give you guys the lowdown of what he would do. So basically he would have his wife or other women that he hired as secretaries or whatever, he would have them actually go to schools, whether it was middle schools or high schools, and or like parties. Mr. Epstein, he mingled with Bill Clinton. He knew Harvey Weinstein, and I've talked about him on this channel as well, because that was the spark of the Me Too movement. He knew Harvey Weinstein. He knew a lot of like famous people in Hollywood. So people knew of him or saw him, but they didn't know like who he was, and he's considered new money, so his family didn't have money. He acquired the money on his own. He would basically send his wife and other women that he had working for him at the time as secretaries to, you know, parties and to schools, middle schools and high schools, to find young vulnerable women. And he would tell them to offer them money for a massage. That was the whole bit. If you give me a massage, I'll give you $200. And a lot of the women at the time, or the women that they would prey on, would go for it because they needed the money, or whatever the case may be. They would go for it. They would go wherever he was, whether it was an apartment or his home, and they would perform a, you know, traditional massage, rubbing on his feet, rubbing on his legs or something, and then he would turn over and expect them to have sex with him. Most of these young women were between the ages of 12 and 16, which is of course illegal and disgusting. So making him a pedophile. Not only did he go to schools and, you know, parties with young women that would, you know, sneak in or whatever, he will also fly girls back and forth from across state lines and, you know, internationally, to pimp them out to people that he knew that were of status. Basically was trafficking girls back and forth that were underage for sex, basically pimping them out and prostituting them. So he was doing this from 1990 up until well past the 2000s. So up until maybe 2017, he was doing this, like, just, you know, raping women and molesting kids and young girls, and it's just absolutely disgusting. When I was watching the documentary, I had questions instantly. Like, I was like, who is doing this? Like, who's helping him? Because he can't do this alone. And I already knew that because I've done a video on R. Kelly as well. So I'm like, who's helping him? Who's behind this? And, you know, his wife was the main one, and she was actually participating in some of the, you know, events with the women. She would actually take her clothes off and, you know, touch on the girls. So she was molesting the girls as well, which is disgusting. And this is the thing that took the cake, was that he would also, you know, sometimes there would be women that would come to his house and would be adamant about, like, not, you know, sleeping with him. And he wouldn't actually molest them, but he would ask them to bring back some of their friends. And they actually went for it. Some of the girls actually brought between 40 and 60 girls to him, and, you know, had them raped and molested. It wasn't just like people that he hired. It was kids that was doing it to other kids. It was, you know, literally kids in school would, like, pass notes to other girls and be like, do you want to get this old man a massage for some cash? And he'll give it to you. They'll come to give him some little basic ass massage, but they'll end up getting molested. And that kind of shocked me, because it was just like, he tried to molest you, and you gonna, like, put other girls onto that, knowing what he's capable of and knowing what he was doing was wrong. You would still do that. And one actually talked to the police and told them, like, I brought like between 40 and 50 girls to him, and they were like, well, you just admitted to being a part of the crime. Do you know that? Like, you basically just told us that you're just as nasty as him. And, you know, a lot of those women were ridiculed for their part in it, because you did play a role. And personally, I don't feel sorry for those women at all, because it's like, you knew what he was doing was wrong, and just because he didn't do it to you, you excused it. And not only did you excuse it, but you allowed other young girls to get molested on your accord. And there's no amount of good that you could possibly do in this world, like, moving forward for the rest of your life, that would change the fact that you were involved. And I just think that that's disgusting. I don't know how many times I say disgusting. So the Palm Beach local police, they started to get tips from people that would call saying that their daughters were going to Jeffrey Epstein's house and saying that he molested them and stuff like that. So the police was starting to get hip to what he was doing, but he he mostly, gave donations to the police department. And I think that was because he knew what he was doing was wrong and he wanted to cover his own ass. The police really respected him because he was donating money and equipment to the police department. But there were a few great police officers that wasn't going for it, especially because they were the ones that were interviewing the women and talking to them and hearing their account. The young women had similar stories about them getting driven to his house, and he was on a massage table turned on his stomach, and then as the massage progressed he turned around and started to molest them and things like that. So all of the women had similar stories. And all of the women had different backgrounds. Some came from money, some didn't. Some were raped before, some were, just down and out. Some were runaways. Like, some of them actually needed the money, so they were willing to do it. And a lot of them actually went back to him, and even though they were molested, because they saw it as an opportunity. After the police really couldn't do anything about it, by the time the police in Palm Beach had over 40 victims of, Jeffrey Epstein, FBI took over the case in 2006. And the FBI really took over the case in 2006 because there was a lot of corruption going on with the Palm Beach Police Department. A lot of the people that lived in Palm Beach, didn't want the scandal to break, or they, had relationships with people in the police department that were excusing what was happening or whatever the case may be. So the FBI got involved. And what I really wanted to know was, how did he get money? Like, how did he get rich in the first place? Typical, lie, predator story. He was a liar, he lied about, his college background, which he didn't even finish college, so that he could work as a teacher at this school. I think the school was called Dalton. And he lied on his application so that he could get a job there. And then he wanted to work on Wall Street, so he lied even more to get on Wall Street. And then after they found out that he was lying, he was able to finagle, his job and keep his job. I don't know what he might have said to them or whatever, but he was able to keep his job. Everybody knows that most people would have been fired, if that would have happened. But he was such a good negotiator, or whatever the case may be, as they say. And then he hooked up with a guy named Steven Hoffenberg. He was the CEO of some company back in the 80s, and he was actually running a Ponzi scheme. So basically he was manipulating people's interest in the company and getting them to invest their actual money, which was thousands of dollars, into the company, and it wasn't as valuable as he was saying. So he was basically just, taking people's money and saying that he was going to invest it in the company and didn't end up doing that. So he was running a Ponzi scheme for some years, and he wanted someone that knew about Wall Street enough to kind of, finesse, basically. So he hired Jeffrey Epstein, and that's how Jeffrey Epstein was working very closely beside him and was able to acquire $460 million. Jeffrey Epstein was also trading stocks illegally from the stock market. And he ended up getting caught and sentenced to 20 years in prison. And he didn't rat on Jeffrey Epstein, saying that he was working closely beside him. He didn't, snitch. He kept it to himself because Jeffrey Epstein told him that he was a witness for the police before, and that he basically has pull in the police department so that he couldn't get exonerated or whatever. So he said whatever he could there. Also, which is a kicker, is that Jeffrey Epstein had a sexual relationship with Leslie Wexner, and Leslie Wexner was a very rich man. He owned the clothing store The Limited, and he also bought Victoria's Secret and Abercrombie and Fitch. So he was a very rich man, and they had a relationship, and I'm pretty sure that was true. it didn't surprise me. Not Epstein, but Wexner. He was an old man, and I could see him wanting. Um, I could see like a young Jeffrey Epstein just telling this man whatever he wanted to hear just so that he could get what he wanted. If Jeffrey Epstein found out like what your weakness was or what you liked, he would, exploit that, as they said in a documentary. And I'm pretty sure they got close enough to the point where he figured out that he was gay and he wanted to kind of, just act like he liked him or whatever so that, he could get his money, and he did. So he ended up getting $1.3 billion of stock. And then, as their relationship progressed, Wexner actually said that he was stealing money from him as well. And they stopped having their relationship, but that wasn't before he was able to get the money. So he, got a whole lot of money. So Jeffrey Epstein would lie to girls and say that because he knew the owner of Victoria's Secret, he was a Victoria's Secret scout. So that's how he got a lot of women too. So by 2006 or 7, he had over maybe 100 victims, 100 young teenage girls he had molested. And in 2008, the case was shut down. So in 2008, the case was shut down and nobody knew why. And then mysteriously in 2009, he appeared in court and he had a plea deal for 18 months in jail for all of these offenses, including, trafficking women. It basically was his charge was just solicitation of prostitution. So it's almost like they didn't even charge him for what he was doing. What he was doing was molesting young teenage girls under the age of 14. Most of them were 14 to 12, and he was a rapist and a molester, and he wasn't even getting charged for those things. He was getting charged for solicitation of prostitution. So that basically is saying that the victims are already prostitutes and that he's literally just sending them places, and that's not what was happening. They were not prostitutes. They were women that were innocent. They were young. They were girls. They were young girls that he would literally use and rape and molest. And that's what his charges should have been. But because it was solicitation of prostitution, that's why the time was so small. And that was just 18 months. So that's basically less than 2 years in jail. That was what he was reduced to until they started to find hundreds of emails of him and the U.S. Attorney's Office talking and discussing this plea deal. The plea deal literally makes no sense. I mean, I've never heard of somebody getting a plea deal. Also in the deal, it was to exonerate all of the people that were involved in the crime as well. So not only did he get a free get out of jail card, but he also had cards for whoever was involved. And I've never heard of somebody getting away with anything like that. So this whole thing is just insane. When he was in jail, he was able to get out of jail. So he basically would come to jail at night, and most of the day he would be out of jail. And they were saying that it was under work release, which I don't understand, because he's a pedophile. So how's he getting out of jail? How's he able to not be in jail? After he served his time, he was supposed to be on house arrest, and he was still leaving his house, sneaking out and stuff like that. And a police officer was following him, so they knew that he was lying about staying at home, being on house arrest in the midst of the trials that were going on and him being indicted and the charges being brought up against him. He actually hired private detectives to follow a lot of his victims. One even shined the light through a girl's window of her house all night long just to get on her nerves. It was just crazy. And fast forwarding to 2010, he being prosecuted in jail, and they were actually taking it serious this time. The FBI had found a bunch of nude pictures of underage girls in his house as they investigated in New York, in his big, huge apartment or whatever. They found thousands of pictures of underage girls, and he knew he was going to jail this time, and it wasn't going to be no joke. It wasn't going to be no way that he could get out of it, because they investigated the emails that were going back and forth about him getting the plea deal, and it showed that it was a conspiracy between the U.S. Attorney's Office and him and his lawyers. So once they opened that up, it was a done deal. It was a wrap. He was actually going to go to jail, and then he ended up going to jail and killing himself. Literally, like the day before he was supposed to appear in court, he ended up killing himself. And that's what they had said. His brother actually hired someone to do the autopsy, and it showed that, you know, there was no way that he could have killed himself because of the fractures that he had, I think, along his chin. So I don't even know. We don't know what had happened. We don't know if somebody killed him. We don't know if he poisoned himself, or I don't know. It's all a huge mystery. But 2 days or a day before he killed himself, he had all his money tied up in the Virgin Islands, basically where he had his island. So he tied all his money up so that the victims couldn't get any of it. And I think it was like $577 million or something like that. He had all his money tied up, and that his brother would get 100% of it, and that was it. Like, basically, he made sure that the victims could not get any money, made sure that they couldn't get any of it. I think he did kill himself, and I think it's because he knew it was nothing he could do about it, especially when you see the documentary and you see how he's being interrogated. Like, he literally pleads the Fifth Amendment every single time. And I didn't even think you could do that. I thought you could only say that like once for one question. So I've never seen nobody do that before. Like, plead the fifth so many times with every question and not be able to say anything, or, you know, just, you know, basically not tell the truth. And I mean, the least he could have did was said something. Like, if you were just gonna kill yourself in the end. Like, I've never seen anybody get away with what he was able to get away with. And it's a shame. Like, it's so many cases like this with white men that get away with doing the most vile, disgusting things to women, and they just get away with it every single time. It kind of reminds me of, like, when Ted Bundy was able to escape jail, and he got out of jail by jumping out of the library window, and it was just so stupid. Like how do you let that happen? That's how I felt about this case. Like, how does the government allow someone like this to be able to do what he was doing, molesting little girls, and get away with it, and putting other men in power on to molest those same girls as well? It's disgusting, and basically ruining their lives, robbing them of their innocence. Somebody would have asked me, like, do you want to go to some old man's house and give him a massage? I would have said no. I don't care how much money that is. I would have said that sounds disgusting. Like, a massage, it doesn't sound like it's just going to be, you know, something quick. It sounds long, traumatizing, and disgusting. Damn these friends, these so-called friends of these girls, because they were the ones dragging them along and dragging them there. So I don't know. I just think the whole thing sounds so disgusting. And shame on anybody, any woman that was actually, you know, being predators as well. Shame on you, because you're going straight to hell with him. Straight to hell. I'm just going to wrap up this video. I had to talk about this because I watched the documentary last night. Make sure that you watch it. It's very interesting. I couldn't help myself but to keep watching it. I think that you will find it interesting as well. A lot of the victims are on the documentary just talking about their own experiences, which, you know, I found really brave and compelling. I just feel like, you know, with parents as well, just please watch your kids. Like, watch what they do. Like, be on top of it. Be on top of, like talking to them and bigging up their self-esteem, because it's so important. Like, it's so important to big up your girls. If you have daughters, like, big up their self-esteem. Like, constantly talk to them, always remind them how beautiful they are, and just make sure that you tap in with them and you give them the guidance that they need, because once they get into this cruel world, especially, sadly enough, even going to school is dangerous. If you got predators coming to the school trying to holler at a 12-year-old girl, like, so I just say, sisters, tap in with your sisters. Make sure you talk to them constantly. Make sure you big up their confidence as well. That's a part of why I do sister talk on my channel too, because it's like me talking to my sister, I'm constantly trying to big up her confidence so that she doesn't fall for things that's beneath her or beneath any woman, in my opinion. So I feel like we as women, we got to stick together, and that was something that I enjoyed from this documentary. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys are interested in the documentary, just make sure you download Netflix, type in documentaries in the search bar, and it should pop up, or just type in Jeffrey Epstein and it will pop up. Thank you guys for watching this video. Don't leave this channel. Make sure you go watch more videos. Make sure you comment below how you feel about this topic. How do you think he was able to get away with this? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. It's Ombre Alert. Happy New Year's to everybody. Okay, let's do this. Subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.